Hey everybody, it's good to see you. I hope that you're having a great week. We look forward to Sunday where we're going to pick up on the second part of our study in the life of Elijah, so I look forward to seeing you then. We're also going to be having, after our worship service, we're going to be having a baptism service, and after we dismiss, people are going to be free to go out into the atrium and kind of circle around and to celebrate the decisions that have been made for Jesus, so we invite you to that as well. Midweek, I just wanted to give you some things to think about, maybe a word of encouragement. When you think of the most popular person in Christianity, I hope you think of Jesus. And when you think of the second most popular person in Christianity, at least Christian history, I would probably think of Paul, the greatest missionary in the history of the Christian church. When you look at the book of Philippians, he writes the letters to the church at Philippi, and of course they would get the letters and they would go into their homes and they would read them publicly. That's what they were meant for. In this time, Paul's under house arrest. He's living in like rented quarters, but he doesn't really focus on that. That's not it. He's not at home. His future is up in the air. Probably you felt like that as well, but you know what? He doesn't really let that be his primary concern. He's bound, literally by chain, to a Roman guard, and he doesn't let that be his focus either, although if you're chained to somebody, you would probably focus on that a little bit. Instead, he said this in Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 to 18. He said, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually advanced the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and everybody else that my imprisonment is because I am in Christ. Most of the brothers have gained confidence in the Lord from my imprisonment and dare even more to speak the word fearlessly. So to be sure, some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry. That's not good. But others out of goodwill. That's good. These preach out of love, knowing that I'm appointed for the defense of the gospel. The others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, thinking that they will cause me trouble in my imprisonment. Here's what he says though. What does it matter? Only that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice, and I will continue to rejoice. Okay, now is Paul saying that motives don't matter and why you do what you do? Well, of course not. More or less what he's saying is even if somebody is working from bad motives, like even in competition with Paul, Paul shared the gospel with 3 people, I'm gonna share it with 5. I think instead what he's saying is that there are times where God is working through you, and then there are other times where God is working in spite of you. But if you look at his circumstances, this is the thing that really captured my heart this week. And it's that even though he's connected to a Roman guard, he says, my work continues on. In fact, the progress of the gospel speeds up. It doesn't slow down. When he wrote this, he says, I want you to know that my circumstances have turned out for the greater progress of the gospel. Would you be willing to say that about your circumstances, even though they're not pleasant ones? So because of his attitude regarding his situation, his testimony spreads like fire. Paul could have looked at his circumstances and said, I just wish that I was somewhere else. Paul looks at his circumstances and says, okay, so what can I do with where I'm at? That's a good way to take a perspective on life. And his testimony spreads not just like to 1 or 2 people, but through the ranks of the Roman guard. And it reminds me, when you live above the circumstances that you're in, then your message is even that much more powerful. There was a New Testament scholar that I knew some years ago, Thomas Lee, and he said when you think about the Roman guard that he's talking about here, some scholars would suggest as many as 9,000 people. I always had this, before hearing that, I always had this image of, guards heard it. And I'm thinking like 5 people have heard it. That's great, totally worth the suffering. Well, 5 would be, but we're really talking somewhere to the tune of 9,000 people. And all Paul says is all of this is because I'm in chains. So a revival starts with 1 Roman soldier chained to 1 man, but not just any man. It's a man with this kind of perspective on the circumstances that he's in. Those are great benefits, I think, to having a Christ-centered focus, no matter where you're at. One other benefit from Paul that I saw from here is he said the strength and the courage of the other believers were strengthened as well because of his witness. maybe when you're in a really difficult time of your life and it's hard to hold up your witness, I want you to remember Paul. Because Paul, though not in optimal circumstances, he says, I'm going to press on for the gospel. And the other believers are reading this as they read the letters. Other believers are seeing this as they see Paul walk around in chains. They're seeing him share the gospel, the good news of Jesus, because the man just wouldn't quit. And so let me encourage you, don't quit, because others will also be strengthened by your witness and your testimony, even though you may be in a time that you don't want to be. I hope you find some encouragement from Paul, and I hope that you have a great rest of the week. And I also hope I get to see you this Sunday at Woodridge at 10:50. God bless.